Hi, welcome back to my channel and a new video today. I'm going to be doing a ranking for all 5 of the Hunger Games films that we have now. Of course, we've just had the new release of the prequel film, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And just to be clear as well, I haven't actually read the first 4 books. I am currently reading Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I tried to get it read in time for the new film, but I am just such a slow reader. It takes me so long, so I'm still working my way through that now. I will get there eventually, but this is very much a list and review and ranking based on the movies themselves. So I'm sure for some people, they'll kind of judge these differently, you know, given how faithful they might be to the source material and whatnot, but I'm strictly talking about the movies here. So anyway, let's get into my list. So my bottom spot in number 5, I'm going to go for Mockingjay Part 1. This one is one that I wasn't particularly looking forward to rewatching, but I do think I got a lot more out of it on rewatch this time, to be honest. And again, even though I say this is at the bottom of my list, it is still a film that I do like. To be honest, I do like all of these films, including this one. And I think the main problem is just given how insane and incredible that ending, or that almost like twist ending of Catching Fire is, I couldn't help but feel like this one was a bit of a disappointment as a film overall, just where you're so pumped up, you're really ready, the tables have turned, beginning of this rebellion, and the film we end up kind of getting here, you just can't help but feel a little bit disappointed by it. I do appreciate that they did go for quite a sort of realistic, gritty and grounded story, like a detailed story of a rebellion. It does feel like they did focus on the realism of that, the fact that the hardships are not yet over, there's still a lot to be done and everything like that. So it was quite a realistic tale. They didn't do that sort of over-the-top Hollywood revenge kind of story, and I do like that. But just when you're spending 2 hours of runtime in this dark grey bunker in District 13 with a load of characters that we haven't really had time to invest ourselves in yet, other than Katniss. A lot of these other characters we're introduced to, we haven't had time to fully connect with them yet. So I find myself just starting to check my watch a little bit when I'm watching this one, unfortunately. I do still think there are some powerful moments in here though, like the character development of Katniss is really good, because obviously it's all about her kind of having to become this face of the rebellion, having to give her life to a bigger cause than just herself, and she's kind of reluctantly doing so, but doing it with a good heart, and she obviously cares about the cause and is willing to do it as well. So there are some really powerful moments with her, especially when she gives that speech outside the hospital, which they're filming for their campaign and everything. I thought that was a really great scene. But again, it's like with this film, if you think about at the time other films that had the final part split into 2, like with Harry Potter, Twilight and whatnot, I just feel with this one, like if you're looking at Harry Potter Deathly Hallows, part 1 in itself still feels like a very complete film. If you watch it now, it still tells a story in and of itself. You can still watch it on its own and it really does work. But I feel like with Hunger Games, it does just feel like the first half of a movie. It's an incomplete story, and if I didn't actually see this in the cinema, but if I'd seen this just in itself and knew I had to wait a year or 2 for the final part of this, I would have definitely felt disappointed by it. So yeah, it's still a good movie. There's still a lot of good moments and good stuff in here. It is a necessary, important part of the story, but it's not a movie that I think I'd ever go to rewatch unless I was making a thing of watching these all through together. So still a good film, but definitely my least favourite of the franchise. So it's really close between the next 2 for me, but I landed on putting number 4 as the new one, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And from this point on, like all these movies, I would give really highly positive reviews. I enjoyed these a lot, and including this new one. I was actually worried going into this of how they were going to portray the character of Snow, just given what a monster he really is in the earlier films. You just thought, how are they going to find a realistic way to tell the story of this character where you can sort of side with them, but also it still not feel like a completely separate, like this heroic character we're following? How are they going to do that? And they did a really good job with that, I thought. Like the guy who played him, he did a really amazing portrayal, I thought, and it was just, you know, it gave this character enough things about him where it was believable, the things that he cared about and he was fighting for, and you could side with him for those things, whilst also seeing that he still had this very dark streak in him as well, and obviously would lay the groundwork and set him up to be the person that he ends up being, and this sort of dictator of the capital. So it was believable, and you could follow along with him on the story, despite the character you know he ends up being. I did also love as well the fact that, of course, it's being a prequel. I think it's set like 10 years after the war, and you get to see, you know, like the Hunger Games in its very early days where it wasn't organised. It's very early days of development, and, you know, loads of the problems with it haven't been ironed out yet. And it's like all these really interesting things you see about it as it was setting up, and you can see it's set in a world where the war has only just recently ended, so everything's a little bit broken and run down looking, and just all those real details just really got you immersed into this world. And I love as well that even though I don't actually know what universe Hunger Games meant to be in, but it's obviously like a science fiction futuristic type thing, and you can definitely see that this is long in the past, way before the events, like in the earlier days of technology in this universe and everything like that. So the Hunger Games themselves play out very differently to the way the new ones do, and it did make it feel unique. And that was something as well. I wondered. I was like, is this just gonna feel like another Hunger Games film? But no, they did a really good job making it feel like its own thing while still being very much a connected story. So I loved that. I also, to be honest, I really liked Rachel Zegler as Lucy Gray as well. I know a lot of people in real life have a lot of issues with the actress because she is annoying, but to be honest, I got very immersed in her character here. I did think, I was like, is she going to be filling the shoes of Jennifer Lawrence? Like, how's that going to work? Is she the main character? But no, she's not. She's very much a side character. Even though she gets a lot of screen time, she is a side character here, and she gets just enough that you really do get to care about her. You believe the chemistry between her and Snow as well. And she's got an incredible voice. I didn't realise how much, like, it's like a musical at times, this film. There's so much singing in it. But it's not in a cheesy way. The film does it so that it's like, it's very natural how these scenes play out, given her backstory as well and everything like that. So, yeah, she was really great also. I think the thing about this film, like, it's long. It's very long. It's like 2 hours 45. And that would be fine. But I do feel like the way they do these 3 acts, because the film's separated into 3 acts, part of it to me felt a bit unnatural. And I think that's because once the Hunger Games have ended, that's the end of Act 2. And then it's effectively setting up this whole extra story. And a lot of those scenes feel like the opening of a film, which feels very strange when you've already been there for 2 hours. So even though I was engaged and I did find interesting what was going on, and again, it's apparently it's very true to the book as well. I'm not up to there yet, so it needed to be there. But at that point, I feel like they could have found a way to sort of tighten the whole thing up and let it transition between these acts a little bit more naturally, because to me, it does feel like at the end you're watching the beginning of a movie when you're actually at the end. So, again, it's a very detailed, very big film. I did really enjoy it. But something about the pacing maybe just felt a little bit off to me. But no, still very, very good film. I'm looking forward to seeing it again as well. I may do a more detailed review as well once I've got it on DVD. But highly recommend you go and see it, especially if you're a Hunger Games fan. You'll definitely enjoy this one as well. So number 3 is Mockingjay Part 2. If I hadn't have rewatched this would have been below the new one for me. I again, like the first one, like the first Mockingjay, I did enjoy this one again much more on a second watch. I still think the first half of this film takes a little bit of time to really find its focus. Like, it does feel like it's kind of all over the place a bit, different characters. It doesn't really feel like the plot's really kicking into gear for quite a bit of the runtime at the start of this one. And there's one too many, like, inspirational speeches for my liking, motivational, inspirational speeches, those kind of things. There's a lot of that going on. I'm kind of like, okay, come on, let's, I kind of want to get into the story. And yeah, there's little bits like that which kind of check me out a little bit, but I feel like when it really kicks into gear, the second half of the movie is really good. And it's a great conclusion to this story, and I found it quite surprising the way they concluded. How what happens with Katniss's character in relation to Snow and Al McCoy taking over, and like the first time it kind of threw me off a little bit. It was almost like I didn't know how to feel about it because it was such a surprise. That kind of great big scene in front of the crowd, but watching it again now, it actually did make a lot more sense. And given that you can see, Katniss can obviously see the problems that come from having these people with too much power, these dictators, and even if it's on the right side, it can still pose a lot of problems as well. And obviously, she decides to make that decision to kill Julianne Moore's character as well. So, watching that again, I thought that was a better conclusion. Watching it this time around, and there was something quite interesting about that, I thought as well. Not only is the action brilliant, but I do feel like there's a lot more stakes here as well, like especially when Finnick dies. It's just quite a shocking moment where those underground creatures end up taking him, and it's just like, wow, it takes you aback that they're willing to kill off main characters. They don't shy away from that. Really gives you that feeling that there are stakes there, keeps the intensity up, and just all the more really makes you want these people to finally overcome this situation. So yeah, it is a very good film. It's just not particularly enjoyable to watch. And like, I get that it is dark subject matter. It's a film that is taking itself very seriously, and like, it's a very necessary conclusion to the story. But even despite that, like, the first two films are dark as well, but for some reason I just have a much better time watching them. I just feel myself more engaged with the story. I don't know if it's the characters. I can't even quite put my finger on what it is, but there's something about this film that I just don't enjoy watching anywhere near as much as the first two. So my second place choice is the original Hunger Games, the first movie. Of course, this one was directed by Gary Ross, and I think that's what put some people off this one, because it's got a very different filming style. It's almost like a little bit documentary-like in a way, but that's actually something that I quite liked about it. I do actually think a lot of the games themselves feel the most intense in this film, and that's because of the style of how this one was filmed. So it definitely does feel quite different to the other Hunger Games films, but it really worked for me, to be honest. And again, like I've said with the others, rewatching it, just all the details, these characters, because you know of who they're going to go on to be, like where you've got Elizabeth Banks' character, Woody Harrelson's character, I just love the training, being introduced to the Capitol and the Hunger Games and how it all works and why it's happening. It's a fascinating story to tell, and that's the first half of the movie, and that was the bit before the first time I watched it where I found it all like a little bit weird, and I was like, I didn't really know what I was watching. It's quite strange if you don't know what the Hunger Games story is. It is a little bit strange, but once you know what's happening in this world and you understand it, seeing it again, I could just appreciate now how brilliant the first half of this really is. And yeah, the games are extremely intense, and they did find a good way to make it so that it's only a 12A rating, so you obviously don't have like gory violence or anything like that, but they did it really cleverly where it does still feel intense. There is violence, there is stakes. You know that, pretty much everybody in this ring of, teenagers, they're all going to die. So it is still pretty harsh. Even for a 12A film, I think it must have been at the very high end of that, because they did a good job with making it still feel gritty and realistic as well, I thought. I also think as well, it's a surprisingly powerful moment at the end where Kato, so obviously he's the kid that kind of leads the more villainous kid, the guy that leads that group, and he's obviously the last one left with Peter and Katniss, and even though he's been this really harsh, nasty piece of work all the way through the film, when he has that speech where he knows he's going to die, and you kind of understand that he's still just really a slave to this dictatorship government, and he's just a kid. He's just, at the end of the day, he's been trained to fight, and he doesn't have a choice in anything that he's doing. He's been forced out here, almost guaranteed to his death as well. And it's like, the fact that he knows he's going to die, I just found it like it's quite emotional. It's quite a harsh scene. Just something about that scene in particular, I think it's quite a powerful moment, and it's just what makes you start to really get that hate and that despise for the people that are running this whole thing. It's just like makes you realise the gravity of it all. And yeah, really quite a powerful ending to the film, I thought. So a great first entry to the franchise. But number one for me definitely is Catching Fire. And I think this is probably a pretty generic opinion. I know a lot of people love Catching Fire. And that's for good reason, because it's a phenomenal film. It really is. It is so good. It's almost a 5-star film for me, honestly. I absolutely love this one to death. I think it basically does everything that the first one does, but just better. It ups the stakes. The characters are more interesting. The story is more detailed. Everything going on, it just pulls you completely into this world. There's so many memorable scenes here. And I like how they up the stakes around the games as well. Like, very creative ideas about, this thing they're doing, bringing in all the winners of the previous districts and the politics involved with getting that to come to fruition. And the fact in this one as well, like, you see in the first one how all this capital works and how oppressive the whole system is and everything. And rather than just playing through that all again, it's like you start to see the signs here that something is coming. The tables are eventually going to be turned back on this government. And, even though these people are being put back against their will into these Hunger Games in outrageous circumstances, you can feel that things are different and the people are starting to get that power back. And I love that about the film. Just the little details they put throughout this to show you that just really make it for quite an experience. I think as well, when you're actually in the games, it's just some of the most immersive cinema, like especially the first section where the group, they meet those other characters they kind of ally with, and they're all in the forest, and you have all sorts of threats hitting them, like the poison fog that's coming in, and those kind of like gorilla creatures coming after them, and all sorts of, like, the film just not let up at all. And again, it's just the attention to detail where, everything's so hot there, they're running out of water, and you're just in this situation with them all, and you can really feel it. And yeah, it just makes it really, like, engaging and intense to watch. Again, I love all the interactions whilst they're in the arena, but I think the thing that really makes the film as well is just the whole final sequence. These characters have worked out a way, using the lightning hitting that tree, how they're actually going to electrocute the rest of all the contestants. And amidst all the chaos, they've been double-crossed by some of their own team. And then you have that whole twist ending where the rebellion is beginning. And it's just absolutely insane. That whole finale is just like every second you're in it from the perspective of Katniss, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? You're just in this situation with her completely, and watching all these insane events just unfold. And when she's being pulled up by that crane outside of the arena with all the fire around her, it's just an incredible sequence. And it just gets you so ramped up, because again, I think that's what gives me that little bit of disliking for Mockingjay Part 1, just because of how perfectly the note that this film ends on is absolutely perfect. And you just have that brilliant end credits song by Coldplay as well. It's perfect. The final half an hour of this film is perfect. I love it. And again, not just for Hunger Games fans, but as a movie in itself, I would highly recommend this one. It really is brilliant. So yeah, pretty generic opinion on that one, having Catching Fire as my favourite, but had to be done. On rewatch, it really cemented it as well. It's a brilliant movie, and definitely in my number one spot. So thanks a lot for watching my ranking of all of the Hunger Games films. Please do let me know as well your thoughts on these movies in the comments. Which ones you liked, your favourite, how you'd rank them, and all that good stuff. And do please subscribe if you enjoy my content to come back and see more. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.